Hello everybody, my name is Stevie Marchant and this is my woodshop. Today we're going to be talking about the circular saw, basics and functions of it. If you're new to this channel, I do new how-to woodworking videos every Monday, basically running through tools and how to use them, what they do. So if you'd like to see more how-to videos, subscribe to my channel, give it a thumbs up and check out my playlist. Right. This prehistoric beast is my circular saw. As you can see, it's Challenge, which is, I think it's an Argos brand one. Quite cheap, but it's got a blade that spins and a flat plate, so it does everything that I need it to do. First thing you need to know about a circular saw is that the blade is a circle, which is why it's called a circular saw. So the blade is round, it spins very, very fast and cuts as it spins. It should have a directional arrow on the side so you know which way the teeth face when you're installing the blade. When you put the blade in, you want to make sure that the teeth are pointing towards the base as it's cutting. So when the blade spins around in this direction, as the arrow suggests, the teeth need to come up towards the base, and this keeps the saw down pressed against the wood. If they were spinning the other way, then the saw would constantly be kicking up and jumping all over the place, which is very dangerous. Yeah. So when you want to change the blade or install the blade, it comes with a nut or a screw in the centre here. You unscrew that and this little lever pulls the blade guard back and it just slides out, so you can lift it and slide it out there, put a new blade in. Blade guard is extremely important. If you've got it plugged in, which I don't, and you're holding it around like this, you're going to want to hold it by the handle, which is where the trigger is. So you're holding it by the handle and you accidentally press the trigger, this blade is going to be spinning quite close to your body, so the blade guard helps prevent that. Also, when you're making a cut, you're starting or finishing the cut, the blade guard automatically springs into place, protecting you from the blade as well. Another feature of the circular saw, it will have a dust extraction port on the back. And basically, if you don't have a vacuum or anything hooked up to it, then what it will do is this hood here collects the chips and just shoots them out the side. So when you're cutting, all the chips will be going bzzz and shooting out the side rather than spinning up into your face and all that jazz and blinding you. But if you do want to use a vacuum, you can just put the port, put that into the port there, and as you're cutting it will suck up all the dust chips and make it a little bit safer and cleaner for your workshop. The most important safety feature of any circular saw is this guy at the back here, which is known as a riving knife, and what it does is eliminates kickback on your tools. And what kickback is when you're cutting a piece of wood, the blade will cut for it this way, and if you didn't have the knife on the back, the slightest movement of the wood side to side or your circular saw will cause the teeth to bite into the wood without cutting it and basically fling it forward. So as it's spinning around, it grabs the wood and flings it away from you, and at the very least that could break a window, damage something, damage your workpiece. Worst case scenario, it will hit you very hard and you'll end up with a big old bruise, if not a broken bone. So always use the tool with the riving knife in place, is very important. Right, so for the next couple of features I'll put this down on a table and move you guys around for a bit to show you these. But first, it's coffee time. Okay, so let me demonstrate a couple of the functions and features of this circular saw. So on the back here, you'll notice there's a twisty knob, and that basically what it does is loosen it off, and that means you can adjust the height of the blade or the depth of the cut on the circular saw. Now that knob is loosened, you can put one hand on the blade here, one hand on the saw, and you can actually lift it up and change the depth. So if I take this out of the way, you can see the saw blade. So say you only want to cut part way into a piece of wood, you can put a mark on here, set your saw blade down, you lift the blade guard out of the way, put the blade up to right up to the wood so the wood stops the blade guard from pinging back, and you can lift up the saw and get the teeth to sit right where you say want to have drawn the line. So while that's still in that position, tighten the knob down, and that will stay in that position as you're cutting. A little bit tricky to get the hang of initially because there's a lot of things to get your hands on and make sure this stays in place, and then the blade guards up and twisting the knob and all that kind of thing. So it's a bit tricky to sort of set up first, but once you've got it set up and clamped down, you can make multiple passes with the saw blade and get a nice wide cut in the wood to accept, say, another piece of wood if you want it to slot down. So the next interesting feature on a circular saw is you can set a bevel cut as well. And basically all a bevel cut is it turns the blade on its side like that, so it tilts it at an angle. This one has two adjusting levers, so you pull this one up and then this one down, and then that means you can tilt the blade like that. And you can also check that it's 45 degrees or whatever angle you want, because on one of the levers there's actually an angle gauge there. I don't know if you can see those numbers or not, but as you move it to the side, it tells you what angle you're on. So rather handily on these kind of saws, you'll have a little mark on the front plate there. One of them will say 0 degrees, one of them will say 45 degrees, and what that means is when you're cutting a piece of wood, you won't obviously be able to see where exactly the saw is cutting into it. So what these markers will do is show you where to line up your cut line. So say you've drawn a line in your piece of wood and you want to cut it with your circular saw, you line up this hole here right at the bottom point with the cut line, and that lines up with the blade at the bottom. And the same with the 45 degree mark here. So when you turn your blade 45 degrees, obviously it's not going to be lined up in that same position, it will be over here somewhere. So you line up the 45 degree mark and it should line up for a 45 degree angle cut. So generally circular saws are between around £50 for one like the one I've got. I think that's about £30–40 really. All the way up to about £500 if you're daft enough to buy a Festool one, which will probably do the exact same thing. There's mid-range ones, about £100 for a Makita, £150–200 for a Milwaukee one. It's entirely up to you, whichever one you buy. I'm perfectly happy with my Argos one for 50 quid. So those prices are pretty much for corded ones, so 50 quid for a cheap corded circular saw. Cordless ones around the £300 mark, depending on what brand you get. The Festool one, 500 quid, I would hope it's cordless and have a pretty good battery with it for that price. And as with drills, you can get brushed and brushless motors. Like I mentioned before, I'm not really an expert on brushed and brushless, how they work, but brushed, you'll have to change the motor brushes, the carbon brushes every now and again. Slightly lower power rating, the brushless ones, there's hardly any maintenance involved, and there's a much higher transmission of power. And you can also get soft and hard start motors, and very basically all that is a soft start motor like the one I've got, is when you pull the trigger it will start off slightly slower and speed up, and you have to wait a couple of seconds for it to build up speed. And a hard start motor is as soon as you pull the trigger, the motor will be spinning at full capacity, and it's quite a hard straight into it, quite powerful. Okay. So personally, I've done this before with a different circular saw, and a lot of people are against it. Some people have done it, don't see a problem with it. I didn't see a problem with it. You can mount a circular saw underneath a table, if you're very careful, watch some videos on how to make one, try and learn a bit about it first. You can mount a circular saw underneath a table and convert a table into a table saw to turn your circular saw into a table saw. And it's great if you don't have a table saw, if you can't afford a table saw, like I couldn't at the time. As long as you get a fence parallel to the blade and you keep your riving knife, that's very important, you keep your riving knife on the circular saw, I don't see a problem with it. Like I said, a lot of people do have a problem with it. They're worried about the motor burning out, other safety issues. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Yay or nay, do you like the idea of putting a circular saw under the table? Have you done it before? Have you had any problems with it before? I'd really like to know, because I can't see any problems with it. If you do it properly, I can't see any issues with it. But yeah, let me know in the comments below what you think. The good thing about circular saws is mostly they will only cut in a straight line. Because the blade is straight, it's very hard to turn it, so you can't cut curves. So if the blade is rigid, it cuts in a straight line, but for added accuracy with your cuts, you can run a fence along the piece of wood that you're cutting. So if you're cutting a piece of plywood, for instance, you can either clamp a long straight board to the plywood, or you can buy these guide clamps, which I use. It's basically a straight edge with a clamp on either side, and you clamp it to whatever you're cutting. And all you do is run the edge of the circular saw plate along the straight edge, and it will keep it running nice and smooth and in a straight line. An alternative to using a fence clamp to your workpiece is a fence for your circular saw. And circular saws, I think all of them come with a little fence. I've lost mine, so I can't show you that, but all it is, it's a T-piece of metal that slots into the front of your blade here and clamps down, and it should make a perfectly perpendicular fence for your saw. So the bottom part of the T-piece will clamp into the front of your saw here, and then the fence will ride along here, and it sits in place, and all it does is rides along the edge of the wood and make sure your blade is the same distance away throughout the entirety of the cut. And if you want to spend a little bit more money on them, you can buy track saw, which is effectively a circular saw with a shallow channel in the base that rides along a track, and that's guaranteed to give you a perfect straight cut every time. That's the basics of a circular saw. Thank you everybody for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Give it a thumbs up, press the like button if you did enjoy it. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any how-to woodworking videos like this. And I will see you next week for another woodworking how-to video. Thank you very much for watching everybody. It means a lot to me. I appreciate it. Bye bye.